welcome back to another episode of Boss Up and Glow Up with Lexi Sample. I'm your host, Lexi, and in this podcast, we are always talking about mental health, how to glow up, and just how to be the best version of yourself that you possibly can be because we all have things we want to work on, okay? Nobody is perfect, and I want this to be a safe space for you to learn more about your mental health and why you act and maybe feel a certain type of way. And I just want this to be a safe space for you guys, okay? Let's dive into today's topic, okay? So, there's this idea that if you just try harder, think differently, journal more, or heal enough, you'll magically just feel better, no matter who you are and who you're around. And I want to be honest with you guys, that is not how healing works because you cannot heal in the same environment that taught you how to survive and that absolutely broke you. And when I say environment, I don't just mean like your state, your place. Like, that's not what I mean by that. I mean people, I mean dynamics, I mean expectations and routines and roles you were assigned before you even knew you had a choice. And a lot of you are trying to heal while still being surrounded by the same energy that beat you down and beat you down and just broke you in the first place. And then you're blaming yourself when it feels impossible to heal. So today we are talking about why that happens, how to recognize it, and what it actually looks like to change an environment without burning your whole life to the ground. When people hear change your environment, they immediately think that the change has to be something dramatic, like move to a brand new city, quit your job, cut everyone off, delete your whole entire life, and start over. And that's not what I mean, like at all. Because environment isn't just where you live, it's who you turn into around people. You know what I'm talking about. That version of you that just automatically shows up in certain rooms, the one that's quieter or nicer or way more agreeable. The one that doesn't ask for much because it's easier not to. That's environment. Your environment is who you're expected to be around certain people. Are you always the strong one? Are you always the low maintenance one? Are you always the funny one, the one who's just chill and calm no matter what the situation may be? Because once people get used to that version of you, changing it feels criminal. It feels like you shouldn't do it. It feels like it's impossible or it's wrong. Your environment is what gets rewarded and what gets shut down. Like, do people hype you up when you're productive, but get a little weird when you rest and just say you're being lazy? Do they love when you're easy but pull away when you're honest? Do you get labeled as the dramatic one the second you say something that matters to you? Yup, that happens to me all the time. Your nervous system clocks that shit every fucking time. Your environment is what emotions feel safe to have out loud. Can you be sad without someone trying to fix you? Can you be angry without being told you're overreacting? Can you be tired without feeling like you need to justify it? Or did you learn pretty early that certain emotions just were not welcome? Because once you learn that, you don't even consciously suppress them. Your body does that shit for you. Your environment is what parts of you get praised and what parts of you get ignored. Maybe your independence was praised, but your vulnerability wasn't. Maybe your achievements mattered more than how you felt. Maybe you learned that people liked you more when you didn't need anything. So you adapted. Because of course you did. That's completely normal. You always adapt to your environment, just like an animal does. We do the same exact thing. Your environment is also that version of you that shows up just to keep the peace. The one who overthinks their tone, the one who explains themselves way too much. You're always over explaining no matter what, the one who swallows things just so it doesn't turn into a whole thing. And after a while, that version starts feeling like you, even though it's really just kind of a survival technique. So, if you grew up learning that love only came when you were quiet, helpful, low maintenance, yeah, Your environment taught you that. If you learned that resting meant you're lazy, unmotivated, or falling behind, your environment taught you that too. If you learned your needs were annoying, dramatic, or too much, who taught you that? Your environment. So, when you're sitting there like, oh, why can't I relax? Why am I always so anxious for no reason? Why do I keep going backwards even though I've done the work? Sometimes it's that you're still in the same room that taught you how to disappear, and your body hasn't forgotten those rules yet because you cannot convince your nervous system that it's safe while you're still surrounded by the same expectations that taught you that it wasn't. And that's not a you problem, that's an environment problem, that's a who you're around problem. Survival mode and healing mode literally cannot coexist. They are opposites. Survival mode is not about growth. It's not about self awareness. It's not about becoming your best self. Survival mode is about one thing and one thing only, and that is getting through the moment. Survival mode wakes up and immediately asks the questions, all right, how do I stay safe today? How do I stay happy today? What do I need to avoid? How do I make sure nothing blows up? It's constantly scanning the room, reading the room, managing energy, and anticipating reactions. Survival mode asks, don't rock the boat, don't ask too many questions, don't ask for more, be easy to deal with. And listen, none of that means you're weak. It means at some point that strategy worked. Now, compare that to healing mode. Healing mode isn't worried about being liked, it's worried about being honest. Healing mode asks completely different questions. What do I actually need right now? What feels true, not just convenient? What do I want, even if it is going to disappoint somebody else? What version of me feels calm, not just impressive? Healing is slower, it's quieter, it is way less performative. And here's the part that kind of messes people up. If your environment is still requiring you to perform survival, you're not failing at healing. You're still being logical. You're responding exactly how a regulated human would respond to an unregulated environment. You do not unlearn survival while still being triggered every day. You don't practice boundaries in a space where boundaries are punished. You don't soften in places where you have to stay armored. And this is where people get stuck because they think healing is about willpower. Like if they just try harder, or if they journal more, if they communicate better, if they think more positive. But healing isn't about forcing yourself to feel safe, it's about actually being safe. Your nervous system doesn't respond to motivation, it responds to consistency, predictability, and environment. So if you're doing all the right things and you still feel anxious or tense or like you're backsliding, just pause for a second, breathe before you're just blaming yourself. Ask yourself here, am I healing or is this just me in survival mode? Because we just talked about the difference. You gotta figure that out first because you cannot heal in a space that still needs the version of you that learned how to disappear. And realizing that isn't giving up, it is mental clarity. Okay, let's talk about the most frustrating part of healing, like the part that nobody understands or wants to really admit, and that is why you keep regressing. You go to therapy, you learn the words, you start clocking your patterns. You're like, wait, I'm actually self aware now. You swear you're changing, and then you go back home or back into that relationship or back to that job that you quit, and suddenly you're like, wait, why am I acting like this again? You're quieter, you're more anxious, you're over explaining, you're people pleasing, you're shutting down, you're reacting instead of responding. And the worst part is, you start thinking, am I actually just not healed at all? Did I just imagine all of that growth? Is this bullshit? Why do I feel like I keep going one step forward and a million steps backwards? Let me be clear with you. That does not mean you're fake healed. It means your nervous system is smarter than your mindset. Your body walks into that space and goes, oh, We know this place. All right, saddle up. We got to protect ourselves here. Before your brain even has a millisecond to catch up, your body has already decided how it's going to survive this situation because your body remembers patterns, not affirmations. It remembers who raised their voice at you, who shut down when you talked to them, who withdrew love, who made you feel belittled and small. So when you walk back into that environment, your system isn't thinking about growth and how you've healed. It's thinking about protection. It's bracing for impact. And that is why you can't regulate when you're constantly being activated. You can't practice calm when your body is bracing for impact. It's nearly impossible. You can't present when you're scanning for danger constantly. You can't show up as your healed self in a space that still requires your survival mode self. And this is why so many people don't feel their healing until they leave. Not because healing only happens after you go no contact or quit your job, but because space finally gives your nervous system a chance to exhale. And for the first time, your body isn't reacting, it's responding. And suddenly you're like, oh, this is what I've been working towards. Not a new personality, not perfection, not moving to a new city, just peace. And if you haven't felt that yet, it doesn't mean the work isn't working. It might just mean you're still standing in the same place that taught you how to brace. This is where things get a little confusing because we already talked about, I'm not talking about a place being your environment. Some people are environments. It's not just about the place, it's not just about the job. Sometimes it's the person. Some people only know how to relate to the version of you that needed them, that version of you that was unsure, that version of you that constantly asked for permission and reassurance, and that version of you that constantly over explained everything, that version of you that didn't fully trust themselves yet. And without even realizing it, they benefited from that version of you. They benefited from you being smaller, more accommodating, more flexible, just confused overall. They were comfortable with your trauma responses. They were fine when you were pleasing them. They were fine when you were overgiving. They were fine when you were always available and had no boundaries yet. But that moment you start setting boundaries, that moment you stop over explaining yourself, that moment you don't blend the way you used to, that's when it gets uncomfortable for them. And notice how they never say, I'm proud of you. I'm happy you're taking care of yourself. I see how much you've grown. Instead, they say things like, oh, you've changed. You're different now. You're too sensitive. You used to be so much more fun. Why are you acting like this? And those comments hit because they sound like criticism. And I can relate to this so much because I've done so much work and just tried to grow and glow up and just be a better version of myself. So, one huge thing is I stopped drinking. Like, of course, I'll go out and drink maybe if it's like a birthday or a special event, but like I stopped going out every weekend and stopped drinking. And people sometimes are like, oh, you used to be so much more fun. Why aren't you drinking? Like, you're being boring. Or I set a boundary and you don't like it. Why do people pressure you into doing things like that? I just don't understand. Like, if someone says they don't want to do something, why are we pressuring them? It doesn't affect them in any way. Like, I'm not shaming anybody who wants to go out and drink. Like, go for it. You do you, but that's not what I want to do. So, why are you pressuring me to do something you want to do? And I had to cut a lot of people off about that because they wanted to go out. They didn't want to just do regular hangouts. Or if I did go out with them and I wasn't drinking, it was just a whole thing and I just don't want to deal with it. So I had to cut those people off because you're not about to pressure me to do something I don't want to do. I don't know who you thought I was or what you thought this is, but it is not that. So yeah, I can definitely relate to that. And I'm sure so many of you can relate, whether it's the same situation or a different situation. I'm sure you have been pressured to do something you don't want to do and you're fucking sick of it. So set that boundary because what they really are is confusion. What they're saying is, I don't know how to access that old version of you anymore. They don't know how to interact with someone who has clarity. They don't know how to engage with you without that old dynamic. And instead of adjusting, they just pull you the fuck back. And here's the important part: this doesn't automatically make them bad people. Not at all. It doesn't mean that they're manipulative or malicious or out to get you, but it does mean that the environment you're in might not be safe for your growth, because healing changes the rules and not everyone wants to learn a new way to play. So, if you've been feeling weird or guilty or second guessing yourself because people are reacting differently to the healed version of you, hold up. Pause. It might not be that you're doing something wrong. It might just be that you're no longer available for that version of you that made them feel comfortable. And that's okay. That is allowed. Leaving an environment that shaped you genuinely feels like you're betraying everyone. And not betrayal like, I hate this place, I'm done. More like, I owe this place something. I owe this person something, because even if it hurt you, it's familiar to you. Your body knows the rules there. It knows what's expected. It knows how to survive. And familiar pain weirdly feels safer than unfamiliar peace. Your nervous system is like, at least I know what to expect here. I know where the landmines are. I know how to brace. I know how to protect myself. And that's why people stay in places that drain them, not because they love being miserable, not because they don't want better, but because uncertainty feels terrifying for your body. And it is learned that safety comes from things being predictable and just knowing what to expect. Healing asks you to walk into the unknown without protection, and that's a lot for your nervous system. So when people say, if it's so bad, why don't you just leave? That question completely ignores what leaving actually costs. Because you're not just leaving a place, you're leaving an identity. You're leaving that version of you that knew how to survive there. That version of you that was strong, capable, resilient, unshakable. That version that learned how to carry a lot without complaining. And healing often feels worse before it feels better, because you don't have that identity anymore. And you're just gonna feel confused. You're gonna feel like you don't know who you are anymore. You're not in survival mode anymore, but you're not regulated yet either. And you're in this weird in between. And no one really talks about how lonely that weird in between stage is between survival and healing, because the people who knew you in survival mode might not recognize you anymore. And the people who knew the healed version of you haven't even met you yet. So you're just in between versions. Trying to trust that peace on the other side is real. And if that's where you are right now, I want you to know something. That loneliness doesn't mean you made the wrong choice. It usually means you're right on time. Changing your environment does not automatically mean cutting people off, blowing up your life, or quitting everything overnight. Like, you don't have to ghost everybody. You don't have to announce everything. You don't have to make a speech. Most of the time, healing is pretty low key. Like, sometimes changing your environment just looks like spending a less time with people who drain you, not because they're horrible people, but because there was something, not because there was some big blow up, but because your body feels exhausted every time you leave. And you finally decide to listen to that. It's okay to let things fizzle out slowly. Sometimes it looks like not over explaining yourself anymore, or not sending that long paragraph on how they hurt you, not rehearsing your reasoning, not trying to make sure everyone understands your intentions, because who cares? No one has to understand why you're doing something other than you. As long as it makes sense to you, that's all that matters. It doesn't need to make sense to you, it needs to make sense to me. You just decide, and that's okay. Let that be enough. Sometimes it looks like saying no without a whole story attached to it. No apology tour, no justification, no, I wish I could, but just no. Just no. And that alone can feel radical if you're used to earning your rest and permission. Sometimes it looks like creating physical space first, even if the emotional distance hasn't caught up yet. You don't have to fully detach. You don't have to be completely healed. You're allowed to take space before you fully understand why you need it. Sometimes it's just choosing peace over proximity. Not everyone needs the same level of access to you anymore. Not everyone gets front row seats to your life. And that doesn't mean you're cold. It just means you're discerning. And honestly, sometimes healing is quiet. There's no announcement, there's no dramatic ending, no explanation. Sometimes it's just boring. You're just calmer, less reactive, less available for chaos. Sometimes healing is simply just choosing different rooms without telling anyone why. You don't owe everyone the old version of you. You are going to feel guilty when you outgrow an environment. That's normal. Like that part is basically guaranteed. You're going to feel guilty for wanting more than you used to accept, guilty for needing something different or new now, guilty for not being the same version of yourself that everyone's used to. And that guilt can get really loud. It can feel like it's screaming in your ear. It sounds like, am I being selfish? Am I overreacting? Do I think I'm better than everyone now? Why can't I just be okay with this like I used to be? And here's what I want you to understand: guilt does not automatically mean you're doing something wrong. A lot of time, guilt just means you stop putting everyone else first. If you were the peacemaker, if you were the low maintenance one, if you were the one who bent over backwards, adjusted, and swallowed everything to keep everything running smoothly and perfectly, of course it feels wrong when you stop. You change the system, and systems do not like change. So, when your healing starts threatening stability of a system that relied on your self abandonment, that discomfort gets pushed back onto you. Suddenly, you're the problem. Suddenly, you're too different. Suddenly, you're too much. But that doesn't actually mean you are. It just means that the system was built around you doing less for yourself. And listen carefully, it's not your job to stay small so other people don't have to adjust. It's not your responsibility to maintain a dynamic that required you to disappear. Your healing does not need permission. And feeling guilty while you grow doesn't mean you should stop growing. It usually means you're doing exactly what you were never allowed to do or never felt comfortable doing because there was always some type of consequence. You might not be able to heal in your current environment if you feel anxious before interactions even happen. Like nothing even happened yet, but your body is already tense. You're already bracing. You're already thinking how to show up, what to say, what version of yourself you need to be. That's not random. You might not be able to heal if you rehearse conversations in your head constantly, running through scenarios, practicing explanations, and trying to predict people's reactions. That's not because you're dramatic or overthinking. That's your nervous system trying to protect you. You might not be able to heal there if you're exhausted after being around certain people. Not just tired, but like, dang, that was a long day. I am so drained. Like your social battery didn't just like slowly deplete, it was disappeared. It's gone. Your body keeps score. You might not be able to heal if you minimize your needs automatically. You don't even think about it anymore. You just say, it's fine. I don't need anything, whatever works, even when that's not true. And you might not be able to heal if you feel calmer when you're alone than when you're connected. That one hits people hard because connection is supposed to feel regulating, it's supposed to feel grounding. And if solitude feels safer than closeness, that's not you being avoidant. That's your body telling you something. And here's what I want you to sit with: peace is information. If your body feels calmer away from certain people, situations, or spaces, that's data. That's not drama. That's not weakness. Not something you need to push through. Listen to it because your body will tell you what your mind is still trying to rationalize. Here's what healing actually needs: it's not motivation, it's not pressure, it's not trying harder. Healing needs consistency, the kind where your body knows what to expect, where nothing feels like it's going to drop out from under you any second, where you're not constantly on edge waiting for the mood to change. Healing needs safety, not perfect people, not zero conflict, just enough emotional safety that you don't have to stay guarded all the time. enough safety that your shoulders can relax. Healing needs neutral. Neutral spaces where you're not constantly being evaluated, where you're not being praised or punished on how useful, productive, or agreeable you are, where you can just exist. Healing needs a space to fail, to have an off day, to react wrong, to not do everything the healed way, because healing is not linear, and environments that expect perfection will push you right back into survival. Healing needs space for you to change your mind, to realize something that used to work for you doesn't anymore, to want different, to outgrow old goals without having to justify them. Healing needs space to not perform, to not be inspiring, to not be strong, to not have it all figured out, to not be okay for somebody else's comfort. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit this truth, and that's this environment helped shape me, but it can't hold me to who I'm becoming. And that doesn't mean it was all bad. That doesn't mean you're ungrateful. That doesn't mean you're disrespecting your past. It just means you're honoring your future. And that's not selfish. That's growth. That's what you want. All right, y'all. If you have been feeling stuck, overwhelmed, or like healing just isn't clicking for you, I want you to ask yourself this one: who do I have to be in this environment? Because if the answer isn't yourself, that might be the work. You're not broken. You are responding exactly as expected to the space that you're in. And sometimes healing doesn't start with fixing yourself, it starts by choosing a different room. All right, y'all, I want to thank you so much for tuning into today's episode of Boss Up and Glow Up. I hope this helped you a little bit, because it can be confusing if you're on a healing journey and you're still hanging out with the same friend group or whatever you're healing from, and you still kind of have those things around you, and you're like, why is nothing happening? Why am I still the same? It could be your environment. So I just want you to take a look at your environment if you're trying to heal, and kind of figure out what it is that you're healing from and just remove it. It doesn't have to be instant removal, just slowly work on removing that, okay? Thank you so much for listening. I love you so much. See you next week.